Hello everyone, welcome to BUIDLHub, a site that's dedicated to bridging blockchain and traditional web. The whole idea is we want to make it easier for people to integrate blockchain into their existing infrastructure, or to make it easier to get started with blockchain if you're new to building dApps, decentralized applications. We're basically taking blockchain and making it look like event-driven programming. If you're not familiar with that, event-driven programming is basically a signal of data comes into an infrastructure, and you write small snippets of code to respond to those signals. Think of it like somebody sending you a tweet or a text, and you have to respond to it. But instead of being you, it's a piece of software. That's essentially what we want to make blockchain look like. So we built out EventFlow, and I wanted to give you a demo and an overview of what the UI looks like, and go through an example of how you can use EventFlow to monitor activity on a smart contract. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you'll see is when you sign up, you won't have any apps. I've got a couple monitor apps that I'm going to go through, but this is basically the EventFlow list. These are all of the flows that you create in a quick view, so you can see like what pieces, what steps are in the workflow or in the EventFlow stream. The activity level, this is recent activity. We basically give you a 24-hour look at what's happening. And then, are there any warnings happening or errors in the flow? And whether or not the flow is actually active, you can turn it on and off for whatever reason. But we're going to go through an example. So first thing I'm going to do is we're going to add a new flow. And the first thing it'll ask is, well, how do you want to trigger the flow? Now we're going to add a bunch of new triggers moving forward, but right now we have Ethereum transactions or smart contracts. We're going to actually monitor a smart contract. So now what it's asking is, and right now this is sort of insider knowledge. You have to know, about a smart contract that's out there in Ethereum. Eventually what we're going to do is expose this at a more application level. So we might say, hey, I want to subscribe to Civic or Uport, which are identity management sort of smart contracts. That way you don't need to know all the details, and we'll curate the list for you and eventually open it up to the community to provide their own curated set of apps, of applications. So a little bit of insider knowledge, so I'm just going to select mainnet and a contract address. So this is IDEX, which is an exchange, a very popular exchange for exchanging tokens on Ethereum. So we're just going to monitor this smart contract. Let's say we wanted to build a dashboard of all the trades happening on IDEX. That's basically what we're trying to do here as an example. So you'll notice that as I was editing, the card had different border color. If there are errors in any of the fields, it'll turn red and a thick border. But once it's in this state with this dashed border, then it means you've made changes, but they need to be saved before they can actually be executed. So that's why this little thing is wiggling for you, saying, hey, you got to save it. So we save it. Notice also that we've got this little ABI piece. So in Ethereum, in order to interact with smart contracts and decode the transactions, there's something called an abstract binary interface, or ABI. What this is saying is we took that address, we went out, and we actually retrieved the ABI for you. But you do have the option of overriding it if you wanted to. If you have your own smart contract that you've deployed, or you have some more up-to-date version than what maybe Etherscan has. Okay, so now if I want to rename, let's just rename this as IDEX source. Again, save it to the server. Okay, so now we've got our source. This is going to be the starting point of our flow. By the way, I can rename the flow. Just click on it, and we're going to name this the IDEX example flow. And I'm just hitting return to get you could either hit return or just blur off of the text field, and it'll save. Okay. So now that we have a trigger, we want to do something with this. And what I'm going to do is There are a couple options here. I could filter out certain transactions from IDEX based on any of the normal blockchain fields. And we're going to make this smarter in the future. Right now, again, sort of have to have some insider knowledge, but we wanted to get this out as quickly as possible and start getting people playing with it and get feedback. But eventually the filters will be a lot easier. It'll be sort of autocomplete with the schema of blockchain events. So you could filter based on any field. You can also monitor for activity, and then you can route it to another HTTP endpoint via webhook. You can send an email to yourself when something happens, or you can send it over to an Amazon EventBridge. And I'll do another tutorial how to set up EventBridge in another tutorial and show you how to maybe wire it up to a Lambda function. But today, we're just going to do this activity monitor. Now, all activity monitor does is it basically counts how many times has it received any data from the previous step. So when IDEX has a transaction, it will basically pass through to this activity monitor. So we want to say, hey, I want to IDEX activities, or just activity. And I want to monitor for, let's say, inactivity. Now, it's rare for IDEX to actually have like problems. It's basically a smart contract that's out there, and it gets a tremendous amount of traffic. So if it's inactive, then there's probably something going on. We actually use this to monitor our own data flows. We have blockchain, or block data pullers pulling data into BUIDLHub, and since IDEX is pretty active, we use it mainly as a signal to make sure that our ingest is working. So yeah, actually, let's have fun. So we'll say we're going to monitor for activity, and every 30 minutes, we're going to basically trigger some follow-on event. So what this is saying is, we get an event from IDEX, it comes into this, and then every 30 minutes, this thing will basically count how many times have I seen input, and as long as the input, that number is greater than 0, it will send an event to its follow-on step. So we'll go ahead and add another step, and this time we'll send ourselves an email. Tell me about it. Okay, so I'll say IDEX is active. Body, I found some IDEX events. All right. Notice that as I'm editing, it doesn't actually take. You actually have to click off or hit return to get the edits to actually apply, and then you'll get into this, hey, you got to save state again. So I save that. Now this flow is ready to go, and again, just to summarize, we're getting events from the IDEX smart contract, sending them through this activity monitor, which simply counts the number of inputs it gets, and in this case we're looking for any activity, and we're going to send an event out of this every 30 minutes, and then this email router will essentially, when it gets one of these events every 30 minutes, will send me an email. Okay? So now that the flow is stood up, we will go ahead and hit basically activate the flow. So at this point, we're actually subscribing and listening for IDEX transactions. And while we're waiting for the blockchain to actually move forward, I wanted to basically say that, why would anyone use this? Well, this is a clear use case, right? If you wanted to monitor your wallet. Another really good use case is for those applications out there that have voting kind of capabilities. So like Augur, for example, or any DAO that requires votes from its members. How do the members know that a vote is pending? Well, this is something you could do to basically monitor the DAO's smart contract, and whenever a vote event comes through, you can send yourself an email so you know you have to go and actually vote. Okay, so we've got some data that came through. If you click on the data, it's not intuitive. If you're scrolled down and you highlight one of the events, you don't really see what's going on. So only the trigger will show the actual details of the event. And all this is showing is the actual event that came through. We add, using the ABI, we go ahead and decode what the function was, and the receipt along with the logs. Where are the logs? Oh, there weren't any logs in this transaction. So bottom line is you can inspect the details of what came through. So here we see we had 11 events come through, and I guess so what's happening, and the reason we did get at one email, that's what these numbers are showing. We received 11 events, which is what was received from the trigger, went through the activity monitor. The reason it sent an email right away was probably because on our back end we've got a timer task that's running every half an hour. So we just got lucky and hit the timer exactly right, where, hey, I saw activity, so I'm going to go ahead and send an email, and it sent an email out. So yeah, that's basically how it works. And again, you can inspect any of this data, and not just email. I could also come in here. I could add another endpoint, like if I wanted to add, like, hey, go ahead and send this to, you know, a webhook endpoint. In this case, it would only send the activity monitor output, which today is just the count of the number of things that it received. But bottom line is, yeah, okay, so I just showed how you could delete the step. It's no big deal. You can only edit the workflow while the flow is inactive. So that's something to keep in mind. If I turn it back on, I can't edit any of the fields. It has to be turned off to do that. There's also help. So over here, there's a description of what EventFlow is. But the cool thing is, if you click on the header of any step, it'll give you some details about the step. You know, what it is, what the parameters mean. You know, just to give you an idea of how to use it. So that's the current version of EventFlow, but this will definitely evolve as we move forward, and we want to make this a lot more abstract. And we also want to make it possible for you to send data to it via HTTP triggers versus just emanating data from blockchain. We want to be able to send data to the blockchain. So that's coming. So definitely stay tuned. And like always, if you have any questions, ideas, or you want to collaborate, by all means, shoot us an email, and we'd love to hear from you. All right, thanks a lot.